Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining me on the
Thanks for
podcast.
having me.
I really appreciate it. So you're at the moment on the, I guess, towards the end of a leg of a long run of stops around Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about your journey so far?
All right. So I'm here actually with a couple of friends as well who are activists and local activists from Australia. We're basically traveling around Australia. We started in Melbourne and we're just going up the coast, doing workshops, joining local activism events, whether it's vigils, cubes, just anything we can join basically. Started in Melbourne, went up to, first we went to Geelong, Colac, and then Albury, Wollongong, Sydney, Coffs Harbour, Brisbane. I think that's it. I probably missed a couple, but yeah.
And how long have you been planning this trip for?
Start of February. Yeah.
Okay, that's not too long.
Yeah, we came on the 19th of February, basically.
Yeah, right.
Flew into Melbourne.
And why Australia?
Why Australia? Well, I was in Bali before.
Okay.
So it's like, if I'm all the way in Bali, because I'm usually in Europe.
Right.
I don't want to take a flight all the way from Europe for Australia. But if I'm in Bali, it's much easier. So I thought before I head back to Europe, might as well come to Australia first.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so first time to Australia?
Yeah.
Okay. How are you finding it so far?
It's interesting because like when you're doing activism, you don't really see what you like tourists see. Like I haven't done much tourism. I've just seen a lot of slaughterhouses and a lot of cubes and met a lot of amazing activists.
Yeah.
But the activism is just amazing here. It's really so inspiring.
What would you say is different about the activism here? Or unique stands out?
Yeah, so what is like one thing that's really, really big here is a nonviolent direct action. So events like Meet the Victim, or just I know there's a lot of like slaughterhouse lock-ons and just different things that they do around Australia that in Europe doesn't really happen because the laws are so strict in Europe that you can get in jail very easily or you can get very high fines. And I've seen that in Australia, it's almost like it's a war right now in Australia.
It's the new frontier.
Yeah, it's next level. Yeah, it's quite different from Europe.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's because Europe has been established probably in the animal rights movement for longer, so they've had longer time to penalize activists? Because it's fairly new here, right?
That's true. It could be because the UK has at least like a good history of the ALF, the Animal Liberation Front, and the Hunt Sabs. They've had so many groups. Like at one point, I think in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, the UK alone had at least 100 hits a night, like from the ALF. Just rescues, financial damage, things like that. So they've really like thought about all the rules and all the laws that they can put in. And here in Australia, I mean, I remember, we can talk about it later, but when the cops showed up at the Meet the Victims event, just two of them walking around like, yeah, right, what's going on here? And then we just all left. I was like, is this it? Like, what is getting arrested?
You're picturing like, mass squad cars and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you are sort of a resident of the world.
Yeah.
I guess I would call it. You don't really have like a set base at the moment, but where do you predominantly spend the majority of your time?
I've been on the road since May last year. But before that, I was living in Barcelona.
Okay.
So that's where I had my room, but I gave up my room obviously because it doesn't make any sense to continue paying rent for a room I don't use. I've been in Barcelona for 5 years now, and out of those 5 years, been vegan 5 years, but doing activism 4 years.
Activism 4 years. Okay. So I want to sort of build up to where you end up in Barcelona and of course traveling around, but you originally grew up in Lebanon.
Yeah.
So are you from Lebanon? Mm-hmm. Okay. And what was life like growing up in Lebanon?
I'm born in Lebanon. I'm actually originally Armenian as well. There's a huge Armenian community there. But born and raised in Lebanon. It's really different because I don't know. Europe is so different from Lebanon. Australia is so different as well. It's just another culture. When I first moved to Europe, the culture shock was really big. But I wasn't vegan when I was in Lebanon. I was vegetarian when I was 16. So as a vegetarian, it was still quite easy because Lebanese food it's already 70% vegan anyway. So it's just hummus, tabbouleh, fattoush. We have it all. So it was never like difficult. But living in Lebanon, is quite a challenge. Politically, just it's a war zone. So I was born during the Civil War, stopped a year or two after, but then in 2000 there was a war for the liberation of south of Lebanon, and in 2006 there was another war, and then just random explosions over a period of like 3 or 4 years of assassinations of politicians or just random killing people for no reason.
So for anyone that, I mean, we hear a lot about certain periods of history, World War I, World II, but there's a lot of wars that this part of the world probably haven't heard about. What was happening in terms of the Civil War? What was the...
Yeah, so the Civil War started actually in 1975. It went on actually for 15 years, which is like, it's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is.
It was, to this day, like in Lebanon, we don't really, when history courses in school, we stop in 1950s, 60s. They don't continue because to teach you the rest, they'd have to point a finger at who started the Civil War.
Right.
And to this day, no one really agrees that one group started it.
Right.
It was like a major thing because a lot of Palestinians were coming to Lebanon as refugees, and then you have the right-wing groups who were against that, and then you have the left who were pro that. And then it's just such a small country, and it has 18 sects. Like there's so many religions, and it's run by sects. It's not like the government is backed by religion, So the second problem started, everyone turned on each other. But it wasn't only like Christians killing Muslims or the other way around. It was literally Christians massacring other Christians and then Muslims doing the same, and just everybody killing each other.
Chaos.
Yeah, I don't know, the death toll was like, I might be wrong, but I think around 300,000 people died.
Wow.
Maybe more, maybe less, I'm not sure.
And what was that like growing up around that environment? Because you're talking about explosions, was there just a lot of uncertainty?
It's really interesting because you grew up there, it's so normalized for you. Like, yeah, this is how it is. I had never been outside of Lebanon to like experience something else. So it's normalized. The violence is normalized because imagine for 15 years people killed each other and no one decided to stop, So that's how normalized violence is. And for us, like during the time when the random explosions were happening, for example, it was after the 2006 war. The 2006 war was 33 days. It was quite intense because like there's a lot of bombings of civilian areas. But it was also the same time I started like drinking, getting drunk, going out with friends, because you kind of know where to go, where not to go. You can mess up, obviously, but then if you're going to think like that, you're not going to have fun. So if that's what I mean, like if that's what's given to you, you're going to make the most out of it. And then the period of explosions was like, just to explain how normalized it was, we used to, I lived in a building, so my friends and I, we used to meet up every Friday night to watch Viva La Bam, Jackass, and Wild Boys in a row.
Right.
Every Friday night, order Pizza Hut, sit down and watch. And so Friday nights were also the nights when the bombings would happen. So while we're watching, there's also like that adrenaline, like when is it going to happen,
But you're sort of distracting yourselves a little bit as well.
And then the Pizza Hut guy used to arrive, give us the pizza, and he used to ask us like, so like, has it happened yet? Because he has to know which way he has to go, like when on his way back to work, because there was no WhatsApp and stuff like that back then,
Wow.
And the problem with bombings is that, because you can say he has a phone, but the problem with bombings is the second there's an explosion, everybody starts calling each other to make sure everyone's all right, and also the system collapses, so no one has coverage, So he used to come bring us the pizza, ironically with dead pigs and like dairy on it, and then we used to eat that and watch TV while other people were bombed. And we used to tell him like, oh no, it hasn't happened yet, or it has happened yet, so you can't go here, you can't go there. Yeah, that happened for a couple of years, and then it just gets so normalized where like whenever there was a bombing, we'd go like, oh, do we have school tomorrow? Because like we don't really care about the bombing anymore. We just want to know if you're going to go to school tomorrow. So
you felt like you became so desensitized.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, right. And I guess like the thing is that sounds like a lot of traumatic, it's really on edge, a lot of on edge energy. Do you feel like that in some way has strengthened you as a person? Because essentially, like, and we'll get to this, but in animal rights, you're obviously around a lot of things that are considered traumatic for a lot of people as well. And we hear about a lot of activists having pasts where they have been exposed to these kinds of things.
So I think the desensitized part happens because we use humor to deal with it. At least in Lebanon, like whenever there's a big issue, the first reaction of Lebanese people is to make jokes about it, you know? Like I remember one year there was floods everywhere. It was like really bad, like millions in damage. It was like people were making so many jokes that the best memes went on national news. Like they shared the best memes about it.
Wow.
But coming from that, like obviously I personally don't use humor to deal with animal rights stuff, because then it's like I meet these animals, I see these animals, it's different.
Yeah.
But I definitely have that system of blockage. So like being in a slaughterhouse, watching these animals, you know, get slaughtered sometimes, or watching them going to slaughter. A lot of times it doesn't really affect me the same way it affects others, but I'm sure it does on another level where I'm not aware of, like just deep inside.
Yeah, so, I understand what you're saying, yeah. And so you're growing up in Lebanon, and what was the decision to leave? How old were you when you left Lebanon?
I moved to Europe in 2011, so I was 21.
You were 21?
Yeah.
And had you studied in Lebanon?
Yeah, so I got my, used to be a French colony, Lebanon, so we have the French diploma when we finished school, and then I got into architecture. I studied for 3 years. And I wanted to leave Lebanon, so I found a university in Paris that recognizes the courses that I was doing in Lebanon, so I didn't have to start from the beginning. Applied there, got accepted, and then applied for a student visa, which is the most difficult part, because the chances of getting rejected are very high.
I can imagine, yeah.
Got the student visa, moved to Paris, and then I got my master's in architecture in Paris, and then I moved to Barcelona after that.
And what was the draw to architecture?
What was that?
What was the draw to why were you drawn to architecture?
I was lost between photography, archaeology, and architecture and sculpture. The main thing that drew me more into architecture is the fact that the chances of making money out of architecture is much more than photography, sculpture, and archaeology. So I also had an uncle and a cousin that are architects, and I always enjoyed watching them, and I love drawing as well. So I just went into that one.
Something creative.
Yeah.
And photography is still quite a big part of your life, right?
It's really weird because like I got into architecture, completely forgot about photography, never held a camera again. I was actually like, photography used to almost get me more depressed because I wanted all these lenses that I couldn't afford. So I was like, I'm going to quit because I don't like having a hobby that I can't afford. And now that I got into animal rights, and I have a nice camera that I use for the movement, for the animals, you know, to raise awareness, so whether it's at vigils or farms. Every once in a while I just take pictures of other stuff, you know, like of a city, or I don't know, if I'm somewhere, like I was in Bali, you know, I took a lot of pictures that for the first time I started really enjoying photography again. And yeah, it became a part of my life now. In Australia I haven't done much because like there's so much going on here with animal rights. I'm like, my head is in another, like the context is different. So, but I'm trying to like do my best to kind of enjoy photography as well, regardless of what I do in animal rights.
Of course. Yeah. And do you find that because I've seen some of your photos that you shot, and you're shooting a lot of like, seems like street photography, landscape, you know, like temples, different things I've seen. And obviously you're sort of saying now that you're in animal rights, you're not shooting as much. Do you feel like photography is something you want to keep more as...
Yeah. So
separate from
the reason why I started doing it in the first place is because when I went to Bali, it was because I wanted to get away from street activism and concentrate on online content, because I went through a burnout last year. And I tried to take a break in Europe, but one of the symptoms of burnout is that you feel guilty for not doing activism.
Right.
And so whenever I was at home and I said, no, I'm not going to go today because I'm going to rest. And 5 minutes later, I see people already there on Instagram. I can stay at home, you know, people are out there doing activism. I'm going to go out as well, grab my stuff, go out. And I don't know, I tried everything. But as long as something is happening, I couldn't stay back. I ended up going. So I was like, best thing to do is be so away from street activism that I can't join, physically impossible to join. And financially speaking, the best way to do that was be in a place where you don't spend a lot of money and where I can concentrate on creating online content. And Bali was Indonesia is one of the few countries where I can go without a visa. So as cheap as Bali is, it was another thing that attracted me. So I went there. And when I was there, I was like, okay, now I have to concentrate more on other stuff, like kind of recovery from burnout is also like looking into, all right, what do I enjoy doing, you know? So that's how, whenever I was out, I took my camera with me, see a nice temple, take a picture, you know, see, I don't know, something cultural, something beautiful that I'm not used to seeing, take a picture of that as well. And it was just like kind of develop your hobbies, you know? Yeah, that's how I got into it again.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about burnout and self-care, because I think that a lot of people obviously struggle with this as well in animal rights. But you went from architecture. Now, I'm not sure, you might be able to fill me in on the time span here, but you also worked to help the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Yeah.
I know there's an acronym for that. I thought I would say it so people knew what it was. How did you get involved in doing work to help refugees?
When I first got to Barcelona, I stayed there for a while until I fixed my papers and everything, because I had my visa was for France, so I couldn't use that visa for Spain. And once all of that happened, I started applying for jobs. But for me, the idea of getting a job in architecture was so... I never thought about it, because it's so difficult to get a job in architecture in Europe. It's really bad. It's one of the worst sectors. Mainly because architecture is one of the reasons of the economical crisis. People went crazy with the budgets of the construction sector. So I started just applying to random jobs, and I saw this job that said like it's for the UNHCR, and I applied, and they got back to me, and so I did an interview. It was basically just help raise funds for the refugee program they have, and they found it perfect because I'm from Lebanon, and a lot of, back then at least, the Syrian refugee programs were much higher. Like, it was more visible, people knew more about it. Right now it's almost like everywhere it's desensitized because people got used to it. You know, yeah, there's a war in Syria, okay, we get over it. That's how people look into it. But like now, like back then, it was kind of more new, and I worked there for around a month. But obviously, being a group that focuses on raising money for the refugees, the income was not that much. Also, the work was like 4 or 5 hours a day, so fairly enough. That's how I got into it, and it was nice because I felt comfortable, because I was like, I'm doing something to help others. And it's nice, you know, I get a lot of people sometimes making racist comments, you know, I'll let them kill each other or something, but also a lot of people who stop and listen to you, and like, you actually feel them go like, wow, I hadn't thought about it, let's help them, you know? And that's something that aligns with my morals, so that's how I got into it.
And do you feel like, obviously, where you grew up, you know, there was obviously civil war and things like that. So, I mean...
And actually, like, Syria is like an hour drive from my place. Like, Lebanon is so small. If you drive an hour east from Beirut, you're already on the borders.
Right.
So I have a lot of Syrian friends. I know what they've been through. So I could connect to it more. My cousin actually used to work for the UNHCR, like, on battlefield. So, like, I know a lot about it, and... You know, a lot of people are very skeptical about these things, you know, where's the money going, et cetera, et cetera. And it was perfect for me because I was like, I've seen where the money goes. So, yeah.
Yeah, first-hand experience. And so where does your love for animals come into this? Because we're going to obviously lead into your vegan journey. But did you have exposure to animals growing up, family, companion animals?
Yeah, I was always a big fan of dogs, obsessed with dogs, as you saw. And we never had companion animals at home for a long time. It was strict, like, at home, like, no animals. Until one day my brother came home with a baby kitten like this, and my parents couldn't say no because he was so small and so cute, and I was so against it. I was like, if we're gonna get any animal, it has to be a dog. I don't know what. Within 3 days I was in love with him, and from that day on, it just, like, I got more and more attached to him. I realized, like, the part of me that loves animals came out more. And then I think it was sort of like, I mean, we can talk about the journey and how I got into veganism. It was mainly like those factors helped me realize, like, how much animals mean to me. And then when I was exposed to the information, it was much easier to make the connection, because it was like, yeah, I have a cat. You know, I love my cat. I wouldn't eat my cat, so why would I eat another animal? We had at one point 5 dogs in our house in a village outside of Beirut. Stray dogs, but they just literally stayed outside the house at all times. A mother and 4 babies. But they were making a lot of noise. And one day we came back and the municipality had taken them. most probably shot them as well. Because the neighbors were complaining that they're barking. Like, it's a dog. What do you expect them to do? Sing?
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
And so, veganism, had you heard about it at this point?
Yeah, so at one point, the dogs were before the cat, and then we got the cat. I think my parents had that guilt. That's why they let the cat stay as well.
Okay.
And at one point, a friend of mine told me, she was vegetarian, so she was like, "Oh, you're just such a hypocrite. You know, you say you love animals, but then you're eating other animals." And so she showed me a video on YouTube called Meet Your Meat. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
It's really powerful. It's like, I think it's like 10 minutes or something. Very powerful slaughter footage. And I watched it and I was like, okay, I'm going vegetarian. Because that's what I thought you have to do, you know? Because she was vegetarian. That's what she thought she has to do. And I went vegetarian. I was ignorantly vegetarian for ethical reasons for 8 years. And then after 8 years, and I preached vegetarianism, you know, like, yeah, to be vegetarian for the animals. And I heard about veganism every once in a while. Like, people used to tell me, like, are you ever going to go vegan, you know? And I was like, oh, what's that? You know, and like, oh, no, vegans only eat plants. And I was like, dude, no, I need calcium, I need protein, you know? Like, you can't just eat plants. And I was also convinced that veganism was, like, a dietary issue. Like, people had certain problems, and so they couldn't have dairy or eggs, and therefore they were vegan. And that wasn't my case. I didn't have any problems, so I just stayed vegetarian. But no one actually told me what veganism is until 8 years after. I was wondering out of boredom, why am I still drinking breast milk? Like, it's a weird thing. Think about it. Like, which animal out there in nature goes to another animal after they've grown up and goes like, no, I'm going to take your milk now, you know?
That's right.
So I Googled, why don't vegans drink milk? And then I saw the information and I was like, oh my God. What have I done? Like 8 years. 8 years. That's why I don't even count those 8 years, because like I was killing animals ignorantly.
That's right.
So I watched 101 Reasons to Go Vegan, amazing speech on YouTube, followed by Gary Yourofsky's speech. Found out about the Earthlings. By the end of Gary Yourofsky's speech, obviously I knew, like, okay, I'm gonna go vegan. Watched like 15 or 20 minutes of Earthlings, stopped it. I was like, I'm going vegan anyway. And then I straight away watched like a documentary about the Animal Liberation Front and the Earth Liberation Front. And I was like, overnight, like, this is crazy. Like, so much information in 24 hours.
Wow.
But yeah, that's when I went vegan. And it's weird because like a lot of people have to think about it. You know, oh, do I want to go vegan? My first reaction was, can I swear?
You can swear, that's fine.
My first reaction was, fuck, now I have to go vegan. Because I knew I have to, because like all these years I've preached like animal rights, you know, I love animals, I don't know what.
Yeah. I
never thought about like dairy and eggs and everything that comes with it, you know, leather, I don't know what, everything that doesn't come with vegan, well, with vegetarianism. So yeah, that's how I went vegan.
Okay, so you mentioned about eggs and dairy.
Yeah.
Now you obviously found all this information out about those industries. But for people that aren't obviously aware of why that's still harming animals, what would you say? So
dairy basically is anything that comes, well, the secretions of a cow basically, and everything we make with the milk of the cow. And the problem with that, I mean, if you just think about it, we're brainwashed to think, yeah, cows give milk. Most of the people don't think about the fact that just like humans and any other mammal, cows have to be pregnant to give milk. And that milk is for their babies. So cows are not walking around and giving milk. Like, they actually have to go through a process. And so I looked into it, and it turns out in the dairy industry, what they do is, first they get a bull. They anally electrocute the bull, which results in ejaculation. They gather the semen, sell it to farms. In the farms, they take the cows. They put their arm inside the anus and then use their other hand to impregnate the cow against her will, obviously. And so cow gets pregnant, then cow gives birth. But obviously, if the baby stays with the cow, as the baby of the cow, they're gonna drink the milk of the mother, just like any other animal. So they take the baby away, and then they start milking the cow. And obviously, cows, just like humans, they have attachment to their babies. They have feelings. They have emotions. They want to be with their babies, and the babies want to be with the mothers. So it's like quite cruel, like to just separate a family like that from each other. And then they milk the cow, until the cow stops producing milk. And then that's when they get her pregnant again. So in the dairy industry, cows are forcefully impregnated over and over again, like getting their babies taken away from them constantly and then being milked. And after 5 years, more or less, they just drop out of exhaustion, both physical and emotional. And that's why they're called the downers. That's the industry term. And cows usually live up to 20 years. So after 5 years, they drop out of exhaustion. And that's when these same cows are sent to slaughter for their flesh to make burgers and things like that. So the dairy industry is the meat industry. And if anything, there's more cruelty in the dairy industry than in the meat industry. And as a vegetarian, I had to think, like, okay, I'm claiming I don't kill animals, but I'm obviously helping like one of the worst industries in the animal exploitation industry. So that's dairy. And this is all other than the fact that we actually don't need dairy. Like the biggest nutrition centers all around the world have already confirmed that a balanced plant-based diet is enough to get all the nutrients you need at all stages of life. So if we don't need dairy, then why are we doing this? We have literally no justification. We just say, yeah, I love cheese. Yeah, okay, so what? You love cheese. A lot of people love a lot of things, but that doesn't justify doing it if there's a victim. So, and I, as a vegetarian for 8 years, it was difficult for me to accept that I've done that for so long. And I obviously was like addicted to cheese, but I was like, okay, yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. And what helped me was whenever I crave cheese, I just remembered what I've seen, the footage I've seen from dairy farms. And the second you put yourself in the animal's place, or you compare that little moment of difficulty you have craving cheese with the actual difficulty that these cows go through, then it's nothing. And you can just have something else. So the egg industry, again, we think that chickens lay eggs all the time and we take it, that's it. But it's actually, what an egg is basically the unfertilized reproductive system of a chicken. Kind of the equivalent of a human ovulation, basically. Now, other than the fact that, again, nutritionally speaking, we don't need to eat eggs to survive. And if anything, eggs are quite unhealthy. In the egg industry, what they do is when the egg cracks, if it's a male, they take the males and they put it on a conveyor belt that goes down a shredder. And that's how they get killed. Or if they can't afford that, they just put them in plastic bags and then suffocate them to death. And then the females, they just go onto a farm, whether it's cage-free or whatever they want to call it. And they have to lay eggs all the time. And these eggs are taken away from them. And we have manipulated like their bodies so much that like they're supposed to ovulate between 12 and 15 times a year. Lay eggs, but they lay eggs up to 340, 350 times a year. Like you and I, we can't understand as men, but a woman can understand like ovulating that many times a year. So it's not right what we're doing to them. They're not, like, these eggs are not ours. We don't need them. And we imagine like it's really cruel to actually manipulate somebody's body to the extent that they have to go through that almost every single day. Because it's also not like, it's quite painful to lay eggs because an egg is quite big, like if you compare it to the size of their bodies. And they lose a lot of nutrients while doing it. That's why they get so sick and they get so weak. And what the industry does is they try to just use these beautiful terms like free range and this and that. Free range, in most cases, it just means there's no cages, which means you can put more animals in one shed because you're not losing space because of cages. And then you get the questions of like, all right, what about I have like backyard chicken, they're happy, or my uncle. I was going to ask you that. Yeah, my uncle has a happy farm, one. And yeah, I agree that visually speaking, the second you pick up an egg, that's from the backyard of your uncle or whatever. Visually speaking, you're not hurting the animal. But we are actually doing, they realize that chickens actually get anxious when their eggs are taken away from them. And as long as you're taking that egg, you're actually in your head confirming that animals owe something to us, which they don't, because you don't need to take that from them. You have no nutritional need to eat that egg or survival need. Well, unless if you're a survival system, which I've never met anyone so far who in a survival system had to eat eggs. So we just take that, and then when the chickens have their eggs taken away on any farm, they just get anxious, so they lay another egg. And so we make them go through that, and every time they lay another egg, they lose more of nutrients as well. So a lot of people, what they do is they just take the egg and break it in front of them. And the chickens love it because they can eat it back and get the calcium back. So, and that's really good for them, you know? So not only it's not ours, but it's actually good for them. Just take it and break it for them. That's it. You don't need an egg. Chickens are not here for you. Animals are not here for you. That's it.
All right, that's great. And so I want to take it back a little bit as well to you've arrived in, correct me if the time frame is wrong, but you arrived in Barcelona. You were working, you studied architecture in
Paris.
Yeah. And then you find yourself in Barcelona.
Yeah.
And then from there, what was your entry point into animal activism? How did you find out about it?
A year after going vegan, I was already in Barcelona. I saw a Facebook post of activists in London doing the Earthlings experience in a metro, sitting down with laptops, with the masks, showing footage of the industries. And it impacted a lot because, think about it, that's the moment I thought, well, that's what I should be doing. Because I'm against it. If I'm vegan, it's because I'm against it. And if I'm against it, then I should stand up for them. Because the animals can't stand up for themselves. They try their best, but they can't do it. So I made a post in a Barcelona vegan group, and I asked if others want to do it. Turns out some people were doing it, so we started joining them. We were organizing our own events. And then a few months later, we formed a group, tried to do as many events as we could, but it was quite difficult to organize because it was non-hierarchical. So we had to take the opinion of like 45 people for every single decision. And imagine 45 people, everybody has different time schedules and different opinions. It was really difficult. So the group stopped doing activism. And eventually in August 2017, if I'm not mistaken, I started the announcement for the Voiceless chapter of Barcelona. And within a month and a half, I was so inspired from the impact that activism has, the conversations I was having with people. I was realizing like, wow, people actually care about animals. You know, if you take time and talk to someone who's open to hearing the information, they care about animals. Most people care about animals, and they go vegan, you know? And so I got into it more, and I started watching more documentaries and doing more research. And at one point, I was working in architecture back then. So I worked for a year with UNHCR, and then I switched to architecture. I was the international projects coordinator of a big engineering company. And I just remember being at work and just like downloading manifestos about like animal liberation, or like just watching videos about animal, like old ALF footage and things like that. And then just reading a lot, hearing speeches, and it just got me so pumped up. And I got to the point where I did so much research that I couldn't concentrate on work, because I was thinking, what am I doing here when I know that 85,000 animals are being killed every single second? Like that, this is not okay. You know, I should be doing something else. Because that's what I would want if I were in the place of these animals. So within a week of having these thoughts, I started looking into semi-professional cameras. I had around, I think, 3,000 euros in my bank account back then. Quit my job, used 1,000 euros to buy a camera, and I went all in.
Wow.
Yeah, because I thought, I knew there's a big chance that it doesn't work out. I don't manage to continue doing it full time with the income, well, with my savings. But I thought, I'm still young to mess up. You know, I'm still young to make mistakes, and I don't care if I lose my job in architecture. If they don't take me back afterwards, I can just go work as a waiter, because I don't care. As long as I'm working and I have food and I have shelter, that's all I need. And that was in September 2017, and I've been doing full-time activism ever since then.
Wow. And so you obviously start the Anonymous for the Voiceless chapter. How long are you still involved in running that chapter, or you obviously stepped away?
Yeah, I'm still the regional organizer for Spain. So I provide support for other organizers in the area of Spain. But I had to step down from being an organizer of Barcelona, because it's not fair that I have a say in the decisions if I'm not even in the city. And by stepping down, you actually make way for someone else to come and become an organizer and learn and grow and do more events. Because if I'm not there, it's not fair if I'm not there to give my opinion about what they're doing or take decisions. But I think I can still support them by being a regional organizer, because regional organizer is not about like physical work in the country. It's more when people have questions, they need advice, they need they need resources. They've just started a group. They're not very sure how to like do crowdfunds or whatever. If they have any problems in fighting, then they just contact me and then we work on it together. But I've stepped down. I think it was last year. I don't remember which month, but I stepped down to make way for others.
Okay, and what was the decision to start traveling? And
so it I think it started in October. No, sorry, it was later. Around March, I was invited to the Hambacher forest in Germany. Do you know about it?
So I did see that you were in a forest.
Okay.
and I saw that there were activists were they building things in trees?
Yeah. So Hambacher forest is a 12,000-year-old forest in western Germany. 90% of it has already been completely destroyed by a mining company called RWE. And 6 or 7 years ago, eco-activists went into the 10% and took over the forest, because all the species that ran away from the destruction of 90%, the ones who survived, are hiding in the 10% and is trying to live there. And it's also a stance against these companies that are destroying the world. It's actually the mine there, it's the most like CO2 emission giving place in Europe. Like the impact of this place is huge. So they took over the forest and they've been living there for 6-7 years. And they basically live in tree houses because otherwise the police comes and takes everything and arrests them. And they face a lot of oppression from the police. The police comes many times. They're facing issues right now again. And so, long story short, I was invited to give a talk there at an event they had called Liberate or Die. And it was more of a direct action event, skill sharing, workshops, meeting people. And right at that time, I also got an invitation to give a workshop on outreach with an Ask for the Voices in Copenhagen. So I started going to these places and meeting more people, doing workshops. And from then on, I started receiving more messages from others, because you start meeting people, or people see that you're doing that and they just reach out to you like, hey, do you want to come here and do that as well? And ever since then, I think that was in March, it was back and forth, going back to Barcelona, then traveling again. And then in May, I just got a backpack and put everything I need in it, and I've been on the road since then. It's more about just people reaching out and asking if I could be of any help, and if I can, why not? If not, I can come and I can learn from them, because that's Australia, for example. Like, I'm not here in Australia to teach people how to do activism. They don't need me. But like, if there is something that they can benefit of, and I know by coming here I can benefit a lot by getting inspired from them, then I'm definitely gonna come.
So, I think what would be interesting to talk about as well, because obviously we can just go from start to finish, what you've been doing for the last however long. But I think for people that are involved in activism or wanting to get involved in activism, and even for myself, it would be really helpful to hear about your experience with burnout and self-care, and maybe what you've come to learn through that experience as well. And let's start with that, because I'd love to also hear about the slaughterhouse footage. So whichever you feel like would be a good segue into that.
So I think one major thing that's not being addressed enough in the movement is mental health. We're all in this bubble where we think we have to constantly be doing activism, because if the animals don't get any break, then we shouldn't either. But actually, this is resulting in thousands of people burning out, which is not good for the animals, because the animals don't need a movement of burnt out zombies. Like they need strong people who are able to do this on the long run, because a lot of people are looking at it as a sprint, like a short run, and we're gonna get there on animal liberation, the world's vegan. That's not gonna happen. This is a marathon. We have to take our time, take care of ourselves. And I was one of those people. So as I said earlier, I just kept on going to events, doing vigils weekly, sometimes twice a week, 3 times a week, or 5-day vigils or 3-day vigils. And it just really starts to take a very heavy toll on you. And because this subject is not discussed enough, we just ignore it. And the more you ignore it, the worse you're going to get. That's just the fact. That's how it works. And I had some other issues within the movement. I realized there's a lot of toxic communication or lack of communication. which is just so destructive. Like people who, instead of reaching out to people and discussing, they just bash them online. And then other people who are so impulsive, they just jump on board because they don't think about the fact that you can reach out to someone and talk to them. And it's the same as online bullying, you know, and we just don't think about these things because we're so like concentrated on the animals that we forget about what we're doing to each other. And if you actually care about the animals, you should also care about each other. Not because that's what a decent human being should be like, but that's because if you destroy another activist that was doing work for the animals, you're affecting the animals as well. So I really think that toxic communication and lack of communication are one of the biggest enemies of the movement. The main issue is that everything happens behind the screen. So people are really mean. People are very judgmental, and they think this is a war. You know, I would get like a comment by a non-vegan, let's say, trolling me, making fun of veganism, and being mean or swearing. And I know all I have to do is just go to their profile, send them a message, and say, yo, listen, like, I don't really appreciate that comment, but I don't think you're a bad person. You know, you probably just had that moment and you wrote that, but like, let's discuss. And 90% of the people go like, oh yeah, sorry, man. Yeah, I just did that without thinking. Because the screen just disconnects us so much. You'd never be the same way with someone face to face as you are behind the screen. So that led to me having like developing a lot of issues, mentally speaking. I had anxiety, depression, insomnia, which resulted in clenching my jaws, which resulted in a lot of migraines and just a lot of ache around this area. So I wouldn't eat a lot. I lost around 18 kilos in 5 months. I put on 10 now. I'm still skinny, but imagine 10 kilos less than this. Because of suicidal thoughts that's been going on for months, which I knew I wasn't going to act upon, but the thoughts were there. I handed myself in at a medical clinic, and they told me like they had to do a lot of tests because I had heart palpitations. I had like a very strong cough, basically an anxiety cough that would come out of nowhere as if I'm being choked. And they did all the tests. I sat down with the doctor for a while, and she was like, you need to start therapy right now. And I knew that I had a tour in Germany in October, starting in September actually. And I was like, I can't start therapy now. She said, why? I was like, I have this thing with activism. She's like, you have to cancel it. I was like, can't cancel it, sorry. Like, there's no way. Because in my head, I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to let the animals down because of a problem I'm facing because of other vegans. That's the worst part. It's the fact that it's other vegans. You rationalized
it to the point where you put yourself second.
Exactly, because I was thinking like, if it's a problem I'm going through because of non-vegans, it's different. But when it's other activists, it's other vegans, then it really hurts more because it's like we're supposed to be working together, you know? But I was doing so much that I was mentally not capable to ignore them or be strong enough. And that's okay. Like, not everyone is strong. You know, some people are weak and people feel bad for being weak. It's all right, you know, like, it's mental difficulties. Everybody has them. So
and being sensitive, I mean, to things, it means that you're like aware. And you have feelings.
Of course. That's the thing. People just completely ignore the fact that you're still a human being and you have like your feelings as well and emotions. And so basically she sent me to emergency psychiatric care, to a hospital, and they took me to the side of the hospital that I never thought I'd end up in, with like the rooms where you hear like people also losing their mind, and like the chair was fixed to the ground because they're afraid to do something with it. And after a while they came, they gave me a pill. I passed out within 5 minutes. I actually had a book about animal rights. I was reading inside because I knew they were going to take ages.
Right.
I took the pill, passed out in 5 minutes, woke up after 45 minutes, and they told me it was diazepam. And they prescribed 2 pills a day because they knew that I'm not going to back up and seek therapy. They said, you're going to have to take 2 pills a day until you're back, for therapy. Walked out of there. I only had told 2 friends that I'm going to the hospital just so somebody knows. The second I told the other one I took diazepam and they prescribed diazepam, she's like begging me, please, please, please don't do it, please, because she had a passive addiction and she knew how dangerous it was. And when I realized it's gotten to a point where I either have to take this very dangerous pill or like face more difficulties, I decided to take a very strong decision that right after the Germany tour, I'm leaving Europe. I'm going somewhere where I can't do activism. I have to work on myself. And this was a difficult decision because with that decision comes the decision that you're not going to take part in street activism again. And because of the lack of self-care in the movement, we feel guilty. We don't think rationally. We don't think that we actually need self-care to do this on the long run. But I took the decision, never took the pills, never used the paper they gave me to buy the pills, and finished my Germany tour, and I went to Bali. And that's when I started working on myself. I bought a couple of books about burnout, started doing meditation as much as I could, on and off. Obviously, it's not an easy journey. First week I was in Bali, it was worse than any other week of the year because I used to wake up and sit down on the bed and I'm like, now what? What do I do now?
I'm so used to moving and moving.
Exactly. Like, I want to go out and do something, and I start feeling useless. And I'm like, oh my God, like maybe I should go back. I started like looking into changing my ticket.
And then obviously with the allure of social media, where you're checking out and seeing what everyone else is doing.
Exactly. And everyone's active. And you feel so useless. But you can always find ways to be active. So what I did back then, I remember I was at a vegan restaurant. It was a small family's backyard restaurant. It was very cute. And this is something I want to like quickly mention. When you're traveling in places, try your best to encourage local businesses. So it's a small family, they're charging nothing. And you can go get a burger like in a restaurant owned by some, I don't know, Westerner or whatever. The money's not going into the community. So I was in this small restaurant eating, and they brought a coconut for me, just like for 60 cents or something. They put a plastic straw in it, and I was like, I wish I thought that they might put a straw in it. And because I had this urge in me in doing something, I was like, maybe I should buy bamboo straws for them. Like it should probably be cheap. But they didn't speak English, so I took out my phone, wrote down in Google Translate. I was like, I love your restaurant. Can you please accept a gift from me if I brought you bamboo because it's better for the environment, it's better for the animals, And the woman replied, thank you so much. This makes us so happy. I don't know what. So next day I was like excited, like now I can do something. Now I can be active. Got on my moped, drove for an hour, found a supplier of bamboo straws. I think I bought 100 of them. And I just, from that day on, whenever I was in restaurants, the second I saw they're using plastic straws, I go like, can you please accept the gift? Just bring more straws.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's a small thing, it doesn't take any toll on you. Like it's not something emotional. You're not witnessing any slaughter. You're not like physically doing much, but it makes you feel good. It helps the environment. It helps the animals. But yeah, in general, self-care could be as difficult as the period that comes before self-care, because then you're accepting, okay, I messed up and I should work on it. And it could be difficult, but I'm a living example that you should do it. And you should accept that you have issues, and that's okay. It's okay not to be okay. I
relate to so much what you're saying. I had burnout at the end of last year, so I think what you're saying will really resonate with a lot of people. And thank you so much for sharing that as well. So I guess one thing I'm taking away from what you're saying as well is that we get joy from helping, from giving and helping others, and it feels like that's something that really gives you a sense of fulfillment and purpose. Have you always felt that urge?
I mean,
is it something you've developed? I'm just always curious.
I think it's just the environment I grew up in. In Lebanon, it's very normal that like if you're driving on the road and there's a car on the side of the road, that you kind of check if they need help. It's just in the culture.
Like with the pizza guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like because everybody has something to offer to someone else.
Yeah.
We're all on a journey of learning about different things.
Yeah.
And you always have to keep that in mind, and we have this thing in Lebanon. It's a quote that says, it basically means do something good, do a good deed and throw it in the ocean. Because don't do a good deed to get something back in return. Just throw it in the ocean because it's going to get lost in the ocean. Maybe one day it'll come back, but you're doing the good deed. That's what matters. And I think that's because of that environment, that's one of the main reasons I couldn't continue living in Paris anymore, because it's such a big city with such a big population that people are so disconnected. I'd walk up to someone like just to ask for directions. You know, I don't like to use my phone all the time. Sometimes I like to talk to someone, and they would like hide their purse and walk away or something. I'm like, get over yourself, man. I just need directions. Like, how bad is your life that you think every single person like approaching you is someone who's gonna rob you or something?
Yeah, it shows how disconnected we all are.
Exactly. Or like, I remember when I first got to Paris, I was like sending messages to my family. Oh my God, there's homeless people in Paris. Because like at least in Lebanon, we envision like Europe is like heaven. You know, they have no problems in Europe because that's what you see on TV. You know, like good things. You know, like they're the complex of inferiority and superiority on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there and I was like, oh my God, homeless people on the street. And then I slowly became one of those people who, if I'm walking down the street, I wouldn't see the homeless person. Because that's what big cities do to people. It's not because like French people are mean and they don't like other people. It's just because any big city you go to, that's how it's going to be.
Interesting thing on that note is like, I lived in Sydney for a long time. My mum, coming from here, went there and she wanted to stop at every single homeless person and help them and give them money. And you sort of say, look, we can't help everyone, you know, and then you realize you've become
one of them. Yeah.
And that's right, you know, because if you're brought up, you know, either in a country where that's part of the culture, it can be a real culture shock.
Definitely.
Or just a realization, because what you're watching on TV or movies, it doesn't map on. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess like the thing is, from that point, you're working on your self-care. Are you still checking emails, checking your phone, or did you have to? How did you manage the social media side of things?
I have an addiction that I'm almost proud of.
Okay.
Instagram being my biggest platform, I obviously have an addiction to always check on it. And I didn't want to. I don't recommend this for everyone, but I didn't want to take a full break because I have a Patreon and I receive monthly donations. And I was not comfortable with the idea of taking a full break while I'm receiving donations from other people. So I did continue working on creating online content. I did continue in supporting people when I received messages. So I continued with that. And obviously not everyone is in this situation. So if you take time for yourself, get off your phone if you can do it. I definitely continued doing that. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's also something that's not really spoken about, because we use phones and social media as this tool to share the message, and you know that you put up a piece of content, you're always curious about how well it goes.
It's not only that; it's mostly like the way these platforms work. For example, take Instagram. Instagram is made in a way to make us addicted and narcissistic. It's literally made in that way, because first thing first, when you open your Instagram and you swipe down, you know that little loading thing that comes up? You know what that is? It boosts your was it serotonin, the molecules that create happiness, or like adrenaline? It has that effect on you. They don't have to put that loading thing. They can just like straight away refresh the page, but they don't do that. It's literally made to build up that thing inside you. And then you get the pictures. The algorithm is in a way that if there's a face in the picture, it gets more exposure. Yeah. A lot of people don't know this, but I can post a picture of a pig, a beautiful pig that's about to get slaughtered, you know, in a very powerful and emotional moment that the pig is having, you know, like either in fear or confusion, and it would get like 3,000 likes. And then I posted a picture of me with someone else and it gets 5,000 likes, and it's like, what's happening here? And a lot of people think, why is the animal getting more than the human? And yeah, we should ask those questions, but it's because the algorithm wants to see human faces, you know? So it's literally made to make us work this way, and it's literally made to make you get addicted. And one thing I've realized is that we are so addicted to it that the second we are with our own thoughts, just grab the phone straight away.
Totally.
You know? Like sometimes I put it upside down on the table so I don't look at it. But then I start picking it up to see, well, did someone message me? You know? And that's just so dangerous, because like you can't be with yourself for 5 minutes, you know? And that's not okay. That's not good. That's not normal. So
at the moment it's something that you, I guess, have to contend with through the work that you do, right?
Yeah.
Because for you, putting that away would mean...
Yeah. But like I'm actually working right now in preparing a workshop in building social media pages, because For example, right now I have, I think, around 45,000 followers. But I realized recently that how great would it be if everyone had 45,000 followers? Because this is not a competition between us. This is about spreading the word. So imagine if every single vegan activist had 20, 30, 50, 60, 100,000 followers, you know? Imagine the impact we would have. And although sometimes some people act in a way that as if this is a competition, I kind of want to break that barrier and go like, well, here you go. This is how you grow. Because like if I can, there's literally nothing that I have done that other people can't do in growing my Instagram page. There's nothing. There I have no skills, no talent, no natural gift. It's literally putting in except the amount of work you can put. Because I'm a full-time activist, I can put more work. That is a obstacle for other people if they have full-time jobs. But other than that, everything I can do, I want to share it with everyone. And then we can all hopefully like grow bigger and support each other and spread the message further.
For the animals, right? And I guess like, is that going to be something that's going to be, you're going to tour and teach, or are you going to have it available online?
Online. Or? So I want to do it online. The only thing that I might have to do is make it through signing up to my Patreon with just $1. But just so, I was thinking about it this way. What if I make it online and then you get non-vegans watching it?
And then they're going to grow.
Exactly.
Right.
But if I make it online, $1 on my Patreon thing for a month, you can literally sign up and then like get off it again. Then you would lose. No, for 1 month. So then you have the access to the video. And obviously if someone can't afford the $1, they can just send me a message and say like, yo, I really can't do it. Then it's okay. But the main issue, the important part is that when they sign up, I can actually check who they are. You know, I can check their profiles, I can check their social media. I'm like, all right, this is a vegan activist, cool. Because I don't want to share my, like everything I've learned with people who are going to do the opposite, you know?
Yeah, so, it sort of leads me into another question, because the way that I see a lot of vegan activists talking about the work that they do is that it's almost like a bad thing to get paid or to get money for helping animals. Yeah. And, you know, you talking about like offering something for $1.
and maybe for free. If you really
maybe
like,
for free, you know. But that even seems like something you have to broach in a certain way.
Well, I will explain it, because obviously if let's say if 200 people signed up, that means I would get $200 if none of them told me they can't afford it. And obviously that can bring a lot of criticism of people saying, oh, you're just making $200 by sharing like Instagram related things that, I don't know, someone is going to criticize that.
What do you think that is? Because you're providing value.
Yeah, I know. And you know, these same people would go ahead and buy like softwares for like $35 and get workshops about other things, but they would never tell those people to not charge, you know? The issue here is that, first of all, toxic communication or lack of communication, but also the fact that our work doesn't have a client. Our client is the animal's life, you know? So people get upset because they think you are using the animal's struggle. But the thing with veganism is that what I don't understand is people have vegan businesses. Vegan restaurants make money off veganism. Nobody criticizes them. Vegan clothing companies make money off veganism. Nobody criticizes them. Professors giving speeches about animal rights in universities make money. No one criticizes them. You can write a book about vegan activism and make money, and no one will criticize you. But the second you say, listen, I'm going to do activism, here's the link, you can do anything with it if you want to. You can donate $1, you can donate 50 or whatever, but it will not decide. Like, it's not a condition. I will do the activism anyway. But if you want to help me, here's the link. I would appreciate it, you know? And then people jump on you. And it's like, wait a minute. All these other places, vegan restaurants, you walk in without money, you're not going to get food. You walk into a library for a vegan book, you're not going to get it for free, you know, unless... But activism, I'm not like... All the other ways of making money from veganism as a business have a condition. To give you what they have, they want your money. In activism, it's not the same. I'm going to do it anyway. And if you want to help, be my guest. If you don't, that's okay. I'm going to do activism anyway. So it's really weird. I don't get why people get so upset about it. In previous social struggles, you know, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they also got money because Yeah.
You have to live.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
the
have to
thing
live.
is,
You
like,
have to live.
your time that you're spending doing activism, if you have to also work
Exactly.
full time,
Yeah.
you're not as effective.
It's not. It's like, I don't understand, because actually there was in Barcelona, if I'm not mistaken, at a vegan fair, a woman was giving a speech. I wasn't there, but someone told me about it, and apparently someone raised their hand and said, "What do you think about vegan activists getting paid to do activism?" And the woman apparently just picked up the mic and she said, "Well, if there's people getting paid to kill animals, there should be people getting paid to save animals." And just put the mic down, like, next question. You know, like, as simple as that. Because we're already like such a small community. 1% of the world is vegan, or even less. 1% of that 1% are activists. We need, like, I get happy when someone says, like, I'm quitting my job to become full-time. And I really hope they manage to make it, because that's another person doing their best. And obviously sometimes it doesn't go the way you want, and that's okay, you know, but as long as you're trying your best for the animals, when you have the good intentions, that's what matters. Now, when it comes to, like, making money off it, like, honestly, I was much better off as an architect, much better off.
You're, like, making money, quote unquote.
Exactly.
Like
yeah,
living.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's just like small expenses, you know? I'm not only not making the money I used to make in architecture, but I'm also not adding anything on my CV. You know, like, I'm 29 now. I do wonder, how long am I going to be able to do this for? I'm not going to be doing activism full time unless if I could somehow afford it when I'm 55. And at that age, I'm not going to go to an architecture company and go, like, "Hey, can you take me? I have 1 year of experience." No one's going to take you. So we have to be practical. Like,
and look, you know, think about a lot of people that do get paid to do jobs that maybe aren't even that ethical, and then they get a retirement fund, and, like, you're putting yourself in a situation where you're living sort of day to day, meal to meal.
My parents tell me, like, every time we talk about it, they're like, "We're worried about you. Like, you're doing okay now, but what about the future?" I just tell them. What do you think
about that?
I just tell them the future, unless everybody goes vegan, there is no future anyway. So
right,
$1 million bucks in your bank account is not going to do anything if the climate's collapsing, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm all for it, because we got to support the whole industry of animal agriculture is based on money. The whole industry, advertisements, lobbying, propaganda, schools, universities, everything. And instead of attacking that, people start attacking people. Like, I make $600 on my Patreon a month, you know, and I have my website to try to, like, make the rest, you know, selling clothes and things like that. But nobody criticized me for my website. You know, it's weird, because it's like, I think people have a problem with giving money without getting anything in return. Because, I can sell a pendant that has a vegan message for $50. No one would say anything. But the same person, the chances of them giving that $50 as a donation is much lower. And that's natural. Humans always want something in return. That's natural. It's okay. But spending our time just criticizing others for doing this, in my opinion, is a complete waste of time.
So that sort of leads us into, you were talking about the different ways that you do actually support yourself as an activist. And one of those ways is I guess it's apparel, clothing, jewelry. What would you call it?
So it started with just these hoodies that I made that had, I think I'm wearing the t-shirt of it now. Yeah, that had the vegan power. And on the back it says ethics over habits. I started making them because obviously I was in the beginning struggling more financially. And I thought, well, if I can give something back, you know, and have some money for my activism, it's even better. And it started selling very well. A lot of people started asking for it, so I made another order and another and another. And I got to the point where I was like, well, maybe I can start making more stuff, because, like, I'm not going to be selling them the same design for like 5 years. So eventually I managed to find a third-party vegan company. And what they do now is we have the website, they get the orders, they print it out, they do the shipment and everything, and then we split the profit, because obviously the way I'm traveling, there's no way for me to do all of this. I used to usually order all the hoodies, get them to my place, carry like boxes to the place where they can get printed, take them back home, take orders from Instagram, write it down on an Excel, and then go one by one to the post office and ship. And it was like such a waste of time that I could put in something else. So I'm doing now t-shirts, hoodies, tote bags. We have beanies as well, and I made like a limited edition silver pendant in Bali. I found a small family that was working with silver. And I took the design that we have on the back of the hoodies and I made it, well, a friend of mine made it a pendant for me. But that was it. And on the website, I also have resources about veganism. I have resources. If an activist wants to buy like gear to start filming their outreach, you know, what gear they could use depending on their budget. And I have some, just everything is also, I'm trying to give it a try with Amazon affiliate program. So basically if somebody buys something, it's the same price, but I could get like, I think 1% or less than 1%. I haven't checked on it because it's really difficult to actually build up those platforms. But yeah, the idea of the clothing came from, well, obviously to start with, to fund my activism easier, but also to be able to give something back to the people. I actually I have almost for a year now on my Patreon a reward system where like if you give 50 a month, the first month you get a hoodie back. And I've written like any person who signs up, send me like a message with what size you want. And for a whole year, none of the people who have signed up have actually asked for something in return. Because those who want to buy something once, they just go on the website and buy it. And those who want to come to the Patreon page, they just want to donate without expecting anything in return. I think I've only had one person ask for a tote bag. That was it. But it just shows that there's different people want to do different things with their money, and that's completely okay. Like, I'm not judging anyone who doesn't give money, who doesn't share, who gives money. Like, everybody's free to do whatever they want and support whoever they want. Like, I remember one supporter of mine who had pledged $2 a month. He sent me a message, said, I'm canceling, someone has switched to sanctuaries. And I was like, that's amazing. That, like, sanctuaries come first. Let's think about it. There's actual animal lives in there. So it's all up to the people, you know. A Patreon is not a condition to do activism. It's just there to support as a backup.
And people choose if they want to support you.
They don't have to. They don't have to.
And they can get access to so much other content.
Yeah,
you would
so
be putting
obviously,
out as well.
Yeah, once a month I make a video going through all the things that I did throughout that month, so that people, like those who have pledged, they actually see like how their money is being used. It's going like into activism. And it's weird because I don't know how many Patreons I have, probably like between 30 and 50 if I'm not mistaken. I make a video and I explain like where the money is going, and like I put time into it. I like 3 of them watch it. I don't know if it's because they follow on Instagram and they already see what I'm doing, but like I think some of them, like maybe they trust me enough to not watch it, you know. But sometimes like, should I even do this? Like, is anyone interested? But I still do it anyway, just in case somebody signs up. Then they can see all the previous months, you know, what I've done, and that helps.
Yeah, I think that's a great format. I mean, when I started supporting a few people, then you sort of get access. You see this backlog.
Yeah.
And so all these people that you see, that there's not only the content they're sharing for free, but there's all the stuff they have to provide to make sure that they're actually doing the right thing by these people. So it's full transparency, really.
Of course. Yeah. For that reason, I also use like a software. Like, I track all my expenses. Yeah. Just in case, like, one day I want to share it, or one day, like, if maybe someone who pledges, let's say, a high amount of money, or wants to, they want to see how I spend it, you know. I have like full transparency for more than a year now, so yeah, that's important. So
what advice would you give to somebody who's vegan and they would love to become active in the beginning of their journey?
All right, so I think first of all, there's a very big misconception of what activism is and what is considered activism. People unfortunately have gotten to a point where they think being an activist means like being on the street. You know, you have to do cubes, you have to do vigils, you have to do direct action, things like that. Completely wrong. You can literally, activism, like, what's so beautiful about activism is that it's accessible to everyone. And what I mean by that is that anything you do, as long as you're raising awareness about what the animals go through and about veganism and animal liberation and anti-speciesism, that is activism. Whether it's a podcast, whether it's a cube or a vigil, a YouTube channel, teachers who talk about it, doctors, people who cook for their colleagues, you know, like, as long as you're not saying I'm a vegan, but I'm not going to talk about it because it's my personal thing, you do whatever you want, as long as you're raising awareness, that's activism. And a lot of people have different ways. People do paintings, people do stickering, people, like, there's so many ways of being active. And it's important to say that because not everybody can do the same types of activism. You know, like some people struggle from social anxiety so much that they can't be at a cube. They can't be on the street doing activism. But then maybe they're good at singing and they make a song about it, you know? So what I always say is look what you're best at. Look what makes you feel the most comfortable. Look what you can give a lot of time to, whatever time you have for it, and just go all in. Yeah,
I completely agree. I also think as well, in addition to that, that if it is something that, like if you have severe social anxiety, of course, like, but if you're just nervous, it can be a great way to grow, right?
Of course, definitely. So, that's actually really interesting. We have to separate being nervous in the moment from actually struggling from anxiety. The great thing about it is that I've actually met a lot of people who suffer from anxiety, and by keeping on going to these events, they kind of overcome the anxiety, and they start building more courage or start feeling better. Obviously, I have to say it doesn't mean that this is gonna happen to everyone. And I'm not saying that you should get over it if you have it, but I'm just saying that in some cases it helps. But yeah, it definitely makes you feel more confident, because if you get used to it, then actually you're building confidence, and that helps in your day-to-day life as well. So yeah,
and also people I think forget it's called social skills. It's not social talent.
So that's true.
You know, you can work on it and develop it, and obviously the cubes are a great way to do that, and because you can just stand in the cube in the beginning, it's a nice way in there.
That's true.
But I do agree, I think stickering all those different forms are really valuable as well. And what about the person who is maybe vegetarian or is non-vegan?
Okay, so for vegetarians, what I say is, for someone to be vegetarian, that means at one point in their life, they got information and they thought, I want to change, and they made a change. Now, unfortunately, the same way I did, the change is not enough. For the animals, as I said earlier, dairy and egg, they kill much more than the meat industry. So I always say, thank you for having done a step, but please consider taking the full step. You know, you're doing it for the animals. That is amazing. It's amazing that you decided to change your ways, but go all the way. You know, contact me or just do your research, watch documentaries, find resources, and go vegan. Go vegan and try to get active in the way that you can. Raise awareness about it, organize events if you can, you know. And for those who are neither vegan or vegetarian, I'd say just listen to your heart. Be open to the fact that you might be doing something wrong. Otherwise society doesn't grow. You know, if you're not going to be open to any type of criticism of what you've been doing all your life, we're screwed. Imagine if everyone acted that way. I grew up, the way I grew up, my environment had made me kind of racist, you know? And when I realized what racism was, I had to accept that I had done, I had racist thoughts or remarks. And it's not easy. It's not fun. But if we're going to grow in any way as a species, it's by being open to these ideas that maybe sometimes you're not doing something good. And if you change your ways and raise awareness about it, we can all move forward. So now we have all the studies show, the biggest nutrition centers, as I said, they all confirm that you don't have to eat animal products to survive. We're facing a huge climate collapse in the next decades. One of the leading causes is animal agriculture. We have a health crisis all around the world, cancer rates, diabetes, heart disease, the amount of things that are caused from this industry, from this idea that other animals are here for us and we have to do this to them and do that to them, is so destructive to the animal lives, to our health, and to the environment, that the least we can do is go vegan. That's the least. And then start getting active for the animals. Always keeping in mind that if you were in their place, that's what you would want. You would want people who actually claim to care about you to be vocal about you. So people get really upset when I say veganism is non-contribution. It's not action, it's inaction. Because they think what you're saying, because I'm vegan only, then I'm not doing enough. No, I'm happy you're vegan. But when I say it's non-contribution, it means by going vegan, you simply stopped contributing to this industry. That's why you say non-contribution. That doesn't mean you're stopping the industry, because we're 1% of the population. If you were 70%, then I'd say, yeah, maybe. But to get to 70%, we need to raise awareness about it. And that's why it's so powerful, because we all have an impact on it. We all have something we can give to this movement, and we all have something to learn from others. As I said, there's literally nothing in me when it comes to being a vegan activist that I was born from day one. It's just like with time, with reading books or watching videos and documentaries, that's what you get. And we have to keep in mind, like, non-contribution is not going to end this genocide. It's much more than that, much more. And it's okay. It's okay if you feel offended. I would too, if I were in their place. But take your time and see why you got offended. If you got offended, it's because you care and you want to get active. So use that to feel more encouraged to get active and do your best to help the animals.
I agree completely. I think that's great. And do you want to touch on what you've got coming up?
Yeah. So I'm leaving Australia in mid-April. I'm heading to Europe, and I'll be giving, right now we have 28 talks scheduled in universities and schools around Europe, mostly Germany and then Switzerland. We just got a confirmation from Belgium as well, and Portugal. So I'm really excited, because I think at one point I got stuck in just like 2 or 3 types of activism, and I realized, there's so much more I can do. It's going to be really great. Students are so open to the message. They're young, so their conditioning is less. They're not changing like decades of habits, sometimes like 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So it's going to be easier to actually talk to their heart instead of their like ego. And one of the schools actually wanted me to give a talk in the morning to the students and in the afternoon to the parents. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Wow, that's interesting.
And yeah, after that, I'll be heading to Ireland for 15 days of activism around Ireland. It's a event called Wake Uprising. It's a new group.
I keep hearing about this popping up.
So I joined them last year. It was called June of Truth. And this year it's called the Wake Uprising. And the people I met in Ireland are amazing. It's really like a family over there. And Ireland is a small country. And from my experience last year, most Irish people are quite humble and open to the message, even the farmers. And it has a great impact doing activism there, because it's such a small country, so the impact is easier. And so I'll be there until the end of June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And how far ahead do you usually try and...
So right now I have that planned until the end of June. And then July, I might have to take like 2 weeks break from street activism, because the talks I think it's 28 talks in 35 days. So
it's a lot.
I have to be careful not to burn out again.
Back to Bali.
I'm actually, I'm considering doing the university and school talks on a yearly basis, but instead of like in 35 days, like do 5 months in different countries, as many schools as I can. Because that's the next generation, and if anything depends on them, it's our survival. So it's important to get there. In August, I'll be joining Animal Rights March. I don't know which ones yet. And I am considering going back to Bali in September for 4 months, make more YouTube videos while I'm there. Because I think I'm at a place where I kind of want to find a balance between working on myself and creating online content, and then the rest of the year is being outside in university, schools, streets, vigils, things like that. Yeah.
And there's just lots of things I would have loved to have talked about. I feel like be good to wrap it up soon. But if people want to look further into the activism you do and follow your journey, where would you send them? So
my Instagram is at seb.alex. My YouTube is Seb Alex. The website for the clothing and stuff is ethicsoverhabits.com. And yeah, my Patreon is Seb Alex as well. You can find it from my Instagram as well. But I always say, like, you also don't have to sign up on a Patreon. For me, if somebody shares something that they think is impactful, that's more than enough. Because what matters the most is that the message goes as far and to as many people as possible. So yeah, and if anybody wants to get in touch for any activism related stuff, or they have questions about veganism, I try my best to answer all my Instagram messages, which is why I'm so addicted to it.
That's why you're here on the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, I could have missed your message, but I just can't. I try my best at least every 2 weeks to empty the whole inbox. So yeah, just reach out and hopefully we'll get in touch.
Perfect. And is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Well, thank you for doing this.
That's all right. Thank you for joining me.
What the listeners, what we can leave with? I would say just get active for the animals any way you can and talk with other activists. Have like constructive communication with other activists. Keep in mind who you're fighting for and be strong and take care of yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Seb.
Thanks for having me.
All right. No worries.